48 hours. That's the deadline he gave himself to turn a bare, cracked concrete backyard, the kind with dead grass, a rusted lawn chair, and nothing else, into something his neighbors would actually stop and stare at. No landscaping budget. No time to wait 3 weeks for a delivery truck. Just one weekend, free materials, and a plan tight enough to actually finish before Monday morning. By Sunday night, it looked like a completely different property. A full outdoor sectional. A coffee table. String lights. Neighbors walking by assumed a landscaping crew had been through. He hadn't spent a cent on furniture, and he hadn't hired anyone. Before a single board came home, he already had it mapped out, a tested plan pulled from a library of over 16,000 woodworking projects, linked in the description and pinned comment below, because a 2-day deadline leaves zero room for guessing measurements as you go. Here's how it actually started. Friday afternoon, he drove to a construction site nearby that was clearing out debris, and asked the site manager if he could take the stack of shipping pallets sitting by the dumpster. The answer was yes. Immediately, most sites are relieved not to pay disposal fees on wood that's just taking up space. That plan mattered even more than usual here, for a reason most people don't think about until it's too late. Not every pallet is safe to build outdoor furniture from. Pallets are stamped under an international standard, and that stamp actually tells you something important. Look for HT, which means heat treated, safe to use. Avoid anything stamped MB, which means methyl bromide, a chemical fumigant you don't want anywhere near furniture people will sit on, especially outdoors where heat can make it off gas. He checked every single pallet before it left the site, tossing 2 that weren't stamped at all, just to be safe. Friday night was disassembly under a work light in the garage, pulling boards free, sorting by length and condition, setting aside anything cracked or too warped to use. Not exciting to watch, but necessary. By midnight, he had a clean stack of usable lumber and a rough plan for exactly where every board would go the next day. With a hard 48-hour window, he also did something most weekend builders skip entirely, batching every identical cut before starting any assembly. Instead of cutting one leg, attaching it, then cutting the next, he cut all matching pieces for the entire project in one pass using the same measurement setting on the saw. It sounds like a small thing, but it's the single biggest reason professional feeling furniture turns out uniform, while rushed weekend projects often end up with legs that are all subtly different lengths. Batching also meant nearly zero wasted motion on a deadline where every hour actually counted. Saturday morning started with the sectional sofa frame, the anchor piece of the whole build. This is where following exact plan measurements paid off immediately, since outdoor seating needs wider, sturdier joints than typical indoor furniture to handle weight, weather, and years of actual use without loosening. By early afternoon, the frame for an L-shaped sectional was standing in the yard, built from boards that 24 hours earlier had been headed for a landfill. The coffee table came together in about 2 hours using the same joinery technique, just scaled down. Saturday evening was finishing work, and this part actually matters more than people realize for anything left outdoors. Regular indoor wood stain isn't built for direct sun and rain. He used an exterior-grade spar urethane instead, the same marine-style sealant used on boat decks, specifically formulated with UV blockers so the wood doesn't gray and crack within a single summer the way untreated pallet wood usually does outdoors. 2 coats, dried overnight, made the difference between furniture that lasts 1 season and furniture that survives years outside. Sunday was assembly, cushions, and the details that make a space feel finished instead of just functional, string lights along the fence line, a few potted plants picked up cheap from a garden center clearance rack, and a small side table built from the last of the leftover boards so nothing from that pallet haul went to waste. One more detail he didn't skip, even on a tight deadline, keeping the finished pieces off direct ground contact. Reclaimed wood sitting flush against damp concrete or soil pulls moisture upward through the grain over time, which is exactly how outdoor furniture rots from the legs up within a year or 2, even with a good sealant on top. A simple set of rubber furniture risers under each leg, just a few dollars for a full set, breaks that contact and lets air circulate underneath. It's the kind of small step that never shows up in a finished photo but adds years to how long a piece actually lasts outside. By Sunday evening, every piece was in place. What used to be a patch of cracked concrete nobody used was now a full seating area, the kind of space that gets used almost every evening once it exists, instead of a backyard that just sits empty because there was never anywhere comfortable to actually be in it. A neighbor walking her dog stopped mid-step on Sunday evening and asked which company had done the work, assuming a full patio renovation crew had been through over the weekend. When he told her it was pallets from a construction site 48 hours earlier, she didn't believe him until she walked over and looked at the joints herself. That reaction ended up being the most common one that week. Nobody assumed homemade. Everybody assumed hired professional. The gap between those two assumptions is really the whole story here, and once the last cushion was in place, he sat down that Sunday night and actually tallied up what a comparable setup would have cost if he'd ordered it from a store instead. A comparable outdoor sectional, the kind sold in patio furniture sets at most home stores, typically runs between $600 and $900 for a similar size. A matching coffee table, another $150 to $200. Add string lights, planters, and a side table, and a full setup like this would easily run over $1,000 retail, sometimes closer to $1,200 depending on the brand. His actual cost for the entire weekend came to under $70, cushions, screws, sealant, and a few clearance rack plants. The wood itself, the single biggest expense in any furniture project, was completely free. What made this possible on a hard 48-hour deadline wasn't speed for its own sake. It was following a tested plan from the very first cut, batching the work efficiently, and knowing which small details, like the pallet stamps and the moisture risers, actually matter for furniture that has to survive outside, not just look good in a photo the day it's finished. Most people attempting a weekend transformation like this skip at least one of those details, and it shows up later: a wobbly frame, with that graze and cracks after one summer, or furniture that starts rotting from the legs up within a year. None of that is a lack of effort. It's usually just a missing plan. If you want to try building something like this yourself, the exact plan used throughout this project is linked in the description and pinned comment below. Sometimes the backyard you've been ignoring for years is one weekend and one plan away from being the space you actually want to spend your evenings in.